hope you're doing well today. So today we are diving into Chapter 8. We'll be talking about the sociological foundations of physical activity and sport. So this chapter explores how sport and physical activity intersect with social behavior, institutions, and culture. So our objectives are with this chapter to show how sport is a socializing force, especially in the American culture, and be able to discuss the nature and scope of sport. We'll also look at tracing the growth of sport and educational institutions in the United States and the attitude of those educators towards its growth. And I expect for you to kind of know the dimensions of concerns in sport today that include girls and women, children, racial minorities, violence, and the use of performance-enhancing substances. Here we go. So here are a few questions we ask when we think about the sociological foundations of sport. First is, how is sport a socializing force in American culture? All we have to do is look at football on Sundays and see how it affects our American culture. What is the nature and scope of sport? And what is the growth of sport and educational institutions in the United States and the attitude of educators toward that growth? And then what are the dimensions of concerns in sport today? So sociology is the study of people, groups, institutions, and human activities in relation to social behavior and order within a society. It looks closely at major institutions like family, religion, education, government, and leisure, and how these shape individuals and behaviors. In sports, this means examining how participation is influenced by our environment, social norms, and cultural expectations. For example, in the United States, there's a strong emphasis on winning being number one, sometimes at the cost of other important values like teamwork, fairness, and enjoyment. The goals of sports sociology include understanding how sport affects our culture and vice versa, as well as how social structures of power and inequality play out in athletic settings, the role of gender, race, and class in sport, and ultimately how sport can be a tool for both inclusion as well as exclusion. And it helps us critically reflect on our own experiences and assumptions. A sports sociologist studies how and why people participate in sport and looks at the influence of media and commercialization, as well as issues of access and opportunity, and the institutional policies like Title IX. And they conduct research, publish their findings, and advocate for policy changes when necessary. So sport is more than just games. It's a reflection of our society. And so again, we ask questions about, does sport help minorities, including women, become more fully integrated into society? And how do the mass media affect sport, or vice versa? And how are politics and sport related? And how does interscholastic or intercollegiate sport influence academic achievement? And how do coaches influence the lives of their athletes? So sport mirrors society, and when done right, it can shape it for the better. According to Coakley, sports are a well-established, officially governed, competitive physical activity in which participants are motivated by internal and external rewards. Do you agree with that definition? Some people may argue that informal or recreational play should also count. Think about how we define sport and what that says about what we value. So what are the characteristics of sport? And what activities can be classified? It typically involves physical skill, effort, and competition. And there are rules that help with organization. Some examples would be soccer, basketball, swimming, tennis, or gymnastics. Now, when is participation considered sport? It typically includes structured competition with rules and training. And it's organized by a team, a league, or institution, and involves a goal of improvement or achievement. And what characterizes sport participation? Commitment to practice and performance, enhance motivation from fun, fitness, or success and identity, as well as emotional investment in the activity. So to kind of continue with that, organized sport activities are structured by institutions such as schools, clubs, or leagues, and they often come with rules, eligibility requirements, and governing bodies. They can provide community and opportunity, but also come with limitations depending on resources, access, and social status. Conditions of sport participation really depend upon the levels of structure. So some sport activities can range from informal and unstructured, like a pickup game, to formal and highly structured, like competitive league play. And then there's institutionalization. This occurs when a sport becomes standardized and consistent over time and across settings. Some key features include standardized rules and their enforcement, and then the organized structure with roles and regulations, referees, and there's an emphasis on skill development through formal coaching and training, and there's also a focus on the technical and tactical aspects of performance as well. So why do people play sports? Sport thrives on a balance between intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. When intrinsic motivations dominate, the fun, the passion of the game, the enjoyment, that is experienced as play. But when extrinsic motives of the rewards, the medals, the money, scholarships, or career paths dominate, then the activity starts to shift toward more of a spectacle or work. So motivations can shift over time from playing with friends as a child to striving for scholarships or recognition as a teen. Sports play a major role in education from elementary PE to interscholastic and intercollegiate athletics. It is an adjunct to teach teamwork, discipline, and leadership, but it can also become highly commercialized, and there are concerns about the educational worth of athletics. Is athletics more important than academics, or vice versa? And what factors contribute to that conflict? Interscholastic sports are those sports that are played in middle and high schools and can promote school pride. They provide opportunities for scholarships and teach valuable life skills, but they can also foster pressure, inequality, and early specialization in one sport. Sports can support educational development by fostering that teamwork and discipline, the leadership, time management, and school engagement. They often build school spirit and encourage physical health and emotional resilience in students. Now, there are some arguments for and against interscholastic sports. Those that are for is it builds character and teamwork and enhances our school identity and pride and promotes healthy lifestyles. But there's also a flip side to that, and that they can distract from academics and may exclude less skilled or less affluent students. And of course, there's the risk of injury or unethical behavior like cheating and favoritism. And then there are some other concerns as well that are facing school sports today. The overemphasis on winning, often at the expense of learning, and the restricted opportunities, especially for those that are non-elite athletes, and eligibility rules that may limit participation. There's drug use to enhance performance, and high costs that burden schools and families. And there's also the inconsistent coaching quality that affects student experiences, and the loss of focus on education as athletics become overly competitive. So let's talk about the intercollegiate sport issues. There's an ongoing debate: should college sports prioritize education or revenue generation? And increasingly, concerns about athletic compensation, the NIL rules, and academic integrity, and the commercialization of college athletics. It's become more of a business than an education. And you have your key governance bodies. So the NCAA governs most major college sports. It sets eligibility and competition rules. The NAIA focuses on smaller institutions with emphasis on character and academics. And then you've got the NJCAA that oversees 2-year college athletics, offering developmental opportunities. Some of the ongoing concerns in intercollegiate athletics includes athlete exploitation, as well as inequities between sports programming and the gender disparities, as well as the commercial influence on educational missions. The intense pressure to win can lead to negative outcomes, such as the loss of good sportsmanship, the neglect of character building, and reduced focus on social development. And reduced focus when winning becomes the only goal, the educational purpose of sport can be compromised. So sports should support, not replace, academic success. While some students, athletes excel, others may struggle to balance both roles. They do have graduation rates that are used as a benchmark to evaluate how well schools support athletes academically. Programs that prioritize education and provide tutoring or study time show better outcomes. School sports are increasingly influenced by money. The sponsorships, the branding, and media attention can shift the focus from education more to profit. This commercial pressure may distort priorities at both the school and athlete level. And it is a business. You have to be able to pay your coaches. You got to have the scholarships for the athletes, and especially with football, you've got all those coaches and all those athletes that you have to provide for. So you do have to be able to balance the bottom dollar. Some student athletes are oftentimes treated more like entertainers than learners. And so they're pushed beyond healthy limits for the benefit of the team, the schools, or communities with very little concern for long-term well-being. And then you've got illegal and recruiting practices where they're offering incentives or breaking eligibility rules, which undermine the fairness and puts the athletes and the school at risk of sanctions. And the pressure to perform can lead some students to turn to performance-enhancing drugs or stimulants, putting their health at risk and violating the codes of conduct. And something that's really difficult, and we kind of run through that here as well, is retention of coaches. There's a high turnover that can really disrupt program quality and student development. And so schools really have to prioritize their coaching education, their consistency, and ethical leadership. So to help with all of this, there's the intercollegiate sport reform. Starting in 1990, schools were required to monitor athletes' graduation rates, and it was a step towards holding educational institutions accountable for ensuring that sports participation supports, not hinders, academic success. And also to promote some balance, some school systems have reduced the length of sports seasons and the number of events, which changes the aim to ease the pressure on student athletes and preserve time for their academics and recovery. In summary, sports sociology examines how sport reflects and shapes social structures, values, and inequalities within education and society. Sport as a social institution influencing identity, group dynamics, and cultural norms in schools. Sports can promote teamwork, discipline, leadership, and school engagement, but it must be balanced with academic priorities. And there are pros and cons. So pros for sport are that it's character building and community pride, social inclusion, and motivation for students. And the cons are that the inequities that are associated in access, the academic distractions, and the gender and racial disparities that occur, as well as the growing commercialization of it. And some really major concerns are the overemphasis on winning and limited access for minorities and low-income students, the drug abuse and the coaching quality, as well as the academic pressures that persist. Systemic issues, the commercialization, the athlete exploitation, and illegal recruiting and early specialization signal a shift toward more of a professional sport model dominating our educational settings. So the initiatives are to focus on monitoring graduation rates and reducing season lengths, enforcing eligibility standards, and prioritizing education over profits, providing tutoring, and making sure that athletes are showing up for their study hall. So the critical question is, can educational sport truly move away from the professional model, or has commercialization permanently changed its nature? And that is all that I have for you today. I look forward to talking with you again. Have a great day.